Welcome back to ManaTutor MTG Draft. Today we'll be going over Final Fantasy. We'll be covering an intro to the draft archetypes, tips on evaluating cards, color rankings, archetype predictions, archetype rankings, and format predictions. Unfortunately, Matt is out sick with a stomach bug and unable to join us, but I know he's doing his homework preparing for the set. We'll start by going over the archetypes, but for those of you that are already familiar with the archetypes, check out the timestamps down below and skip ahead to the section you're interested in. And starting off the first column, we have white-blue artifacts. This archetype will benefit from having a mass of different artifacts and playing cards like the job select artifacts. Second, we have blue-black control. This one's pretty standard with ways to destroy creatures, draw cards, and also cast flashback spells. We have a newer interesting archetype in black mage aggro and black-red. It's an aggro deck that finishes off the opponent by playing spells late with 0/1 wizard creatures that end up pinging your opponent to hit their face. Next, we have red-green landfall aggro. It's an aggro deck that plays a bunch of chocobos from Final Fantasy. They're 2/2 creatures that gain +1/+0 when a landfall happens. There's lots of extra ways to play lands, and a lot of trample to stomp over your opponent. Green-white is a go-wide deck. It plays a lot of small creatures and then pumps them all up to go wide and hit your opponent. White-black is an artifact and creature sacrifice deck. You can sacrifice your creatures and artifacts to gain incremental value. Remember that the job select equipment gives you both an equipment and a 1/1 token to sacrifice. Blue-red is a big, non-creature spell deck. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell of 4 or more mana, you'll gain little bonuses. Remember that the job select artifacts are also technically not creatures. Black-green is a self-mill graveyard value deck. It has some graveyard recursion, but it's not so much focused on that. It's more about value of number of permanents in your graveyard, giving you extra bonuses. Red-white is equipment aggro. Play job select equipment, and even when your creatures die, it leaves around an equipment to equip to a new creature. And lastly, we have green-blue town ramp. You get some incremental bonuses by having dual land towns in play, but really this is a deck that supports playing multiple colors, 3, potentially 4. Our episode on how to evaluate cards was one of our most popular. In it, we highlight tips and tricks to acquire good card judgment. If you haven't seen it, check that out in the link above or in the description below. In that episode, we talk about comparing a card to similar cards in the past to get a baseline grade and adjusting from there. And here, I want to show you a quick trick to find similar cards using Scryfall. And for example, I'm going to take the card Magitech Infantry from Final Fantasy. It's a 1-mana 1/1 artifact creature that gets +1/+0 as long as you have another artifact, and you can pay 2 and a white to search your deck for another Magitech Infantry and put it onto the battlefield tapped. I use this example because a lot of people are familiar with the card that this is similar to. But if you aren't, you can find that using Scryfall. I like to search for the same converted mana cost of 1, likely the same rarity of common, and then I use the O tag, which stands for Oracle, meaning it's text within the card. And I search for cards that contain all the words search, library, card, named, battlefield. There's 4 cards in the history of Magic that match that. One is our Magitech Infantry, but I'm looking for similar cards in recent sets that I can look on 17 lands or on limitedgrades.com to find what grade it was in that set to set a baseline. And in here, we have Whisper Squad from Ikoria. It's a very similar card to start us off at a baseline, and then we can adjust from there based upon the differences. So Whisper Squad is a 1-mana 1/1 that allows you to pay 2 to search your library to put another Whisper Squad onto the battlefield tapped. And looking through limitedgrades.com, we can see in Ikoria that Whisper Squad was a B-. The first difference you might notice is that Magitech Infantry costs 3 rather than 2 to search. That's likely to pull it down a grade or so, potentially even more, but it was at a B- to near high B for Whisper Squad, so let's pull it down from a B- to a C+. Then again, Magitech Infantry has 2 power, or usually should, and so we probably want to up that to a B- again. But context matters, and Ikoria had a strong aristocrat sacrifice archetype that made Whisper Squad shine, and Final Fantasy has a weak sacrifice theme, so let's take that down 2 grades to a C. Then again, Ikoria has a go-wide archetype, which this effect probably isn't as useful for, but the 2 power helps for the go-wide, and so let's bump it up a grade to a C+. As a result, we can imagine that Magitech Infantry will probably be worse than Whisper Squad, but still a strong card. It's probably around a C+ grade, not necessarily a pull into white, but a good card for white decks. And that brings me to why I mention it. First, it's useful to know how I go through and set a baseline and go ahead and grade all the cards. It takes me about a full day to do the comparisons for every card and record the grade in 17 lands. But the bad news is, I did that, and then I lost all the grades on 17 lands, and I don't have time to redo them. I did quickly go ahead and do a field grade for each card, but I don't trust my grades as much as I did in Tarkir Dragonstorm, for example. That said, we'll cover the numbers based on the regrades, and also discuss more of the feel of the set. This shows our usual grading scale going from F to A+, where F, D-, and D, usually cards you don't play in your decks, are graded as a 0, and then we incrementally add a point for D+, the first card you probably will play in your deck, all the way up to A+, being 10. We also did not judge the rares because getting a particular rare you can't count on, so we only looked at the commons and uncommons. When we did that and found the average grade, we found the following scores. Black was highest at 3.44, around a C to a C+ grade. White was second at a 3.35. Green was in the middle at 3.27. Red was lower at 2.95. And blue was quite a bit lower at 2.69. But I saw that blue had a number of unplayable D or lower cards really dragging it down. So what if you only considered the playable cards at a D+ or higher? When we do that, blue catches up, but remains in last place. Notably, green and white also swap positions. Now when we go and look through the depth of a set, we're typically looking for how many cards it has at a C+ or higher grade, because those are the cards that really kind of actively make you interested in a color. You're basically never cutting a C+ from your deck. And when we do that, we find that white was the deepest at 22 cards at a C+ or higher, black was second at 20 cards that grade or higher, green and red were tied at 18, and blue was still in last place at 15. In summary from these grades, I'd say that black and white are the strongest, followed by green and red, and in a distant last place, blue. But I'm not ready to call blue terrible, and something that holds me back from saying that is that this looks like it's going to be a slower set, and blue is set up for control. If the set speed turns out to be closer to Tarkir Dragonstorm, I think blue will be one of the worst colors. If it's so slow that it resembles Aether Drift, I think blue might bump up the rankings. Next, we'll go into the Archetype Rankings. But before we do, Final Fantasy is a set likely to bring a lot of new viewers. If you're looking to stay on top of the best strategy to win Final Fantasy Draft, be sure to subscribe to this channel. And if you're already subscribed, remember to hit that like button. It's your way of telling us you want us to keep making more of this kind of content. Now on to our Archetype Rankings. First I'll go through the white archetypes, then blue, we'll go in Wooburg order. White really seems to want to go wide. Not in the same way that Tarkir Dragonstorm did, it's a bit slower go wide, and then do an alpha strike. Green-white looks good, red-white looks good. White-black is where I start to worry. There's not a whole lot of good sacrifice payoffs. Yes, cards like Albed Scavengers and Graha Tia make me interested in this archetype, but they're very vulnerable. Those seem to be the best payoffs for the sacrifice deck, and I'm not starting off high on this archetype, despite it being two of our highest rated colors. Blue-white I think will be okay, but still on the lower side of the archetype rankings. There's not a whole lot of good artifact payoffs. Cards like Valkyrie Aerial Unit and Ashi, Princess of Dalmasca, interest me, but aren't enough synergy to pull me in. Let's move on to blue. Blue is a support color to slow down opponents and draw cards. I think blue-black will be good with efficient creatures like Locky Cole and finishers like Ultimecia. I also think blue-green will be good because it'll play 3, maybe 4 colors and looks decent as a multicolor good stuff deck in a slower set. I do think blue-green will be the primary way to play 3 or more colors outside of small splashes, which is a breath of fresh air compared to Tarkir Dragonstorm, where a bunch of the decks were multicolor good stuff. Blue-red 4+ converted mana cost spells doesn't look like it gives you that much synergy for playing expensive spells. Longtime viewers will know we judge 4 CMC cards a lot harsher than 3 CMC cards. Ultros looks decent, but outside of that and the Signpost Uncommons, you're comboing just to get an extra +1/+1 counter or treasure for casting these expensive spells. I'm starting low on blue-red for that reason. Black looks inherently powerful, but some of the synergies I'm a little more concerned about. I'm a bit worried about the black-red 0/1 mages being kind of costly to get into play and being overrun by bigger creatures. Queen, Brawny, and Circle of Power are probably the best of them. This is supposed to be an aggro deck that just uses the 0/1s to reach face and finish the opponent, so I have some hope for the deck being able to do that. Black-green looks a little more promising. Just remember it's more about benefiting from permanents and creatures in your graveyard rather than reanimating from your graveyard. Red is basically an aggro color in all the archetypes. The last archetype to cover is Red-Green Stompy Landfall, and this looks good to me with tons of trample. This archetype looks more stompy than it is landfall to me, but some of the landfall is incidental, like Chocobo Kick. And here are my way too early predictions for the archetype rankings based upon feel. 6 of the decks look actively good. Red-Green Landfall aggro, Green-White Go Wide, Green-Blue Town Ramp, Black-Green Graveyard Value, Red-White Equipment aggro, and Blue-Black Control all look good to me. Yes, I tried to rank them to communicate my preference, but it's more so you can swap those in any position that you'd like. I am a bit more skeptical of Black-Red Mage aggro and Blue-White artifacts. I don't think those decks will be bad, I'm not avoiding them, I just want to mention I think they're a tier lower. Going into my first draft, I'm going to try to avoid white-black artifact and creature sacrifice and blue-red big non-creatures. If it's clear that's a seat that's open to me, I'm not going to hard avoid it, but I'm going to try to soft avoid it. I don't think they're unplayable, the synergies just look a tier lower than the rest of the archetypes. Now you'll notice my feel by color grades and the feel by archetype rankings are a little differing. I'm going to trust my gut feel over my grades this round, and I feel like green is probably the strongest color, followed by a tie between black, white, and red, and I still do believe that blue is in last place. Next I want to cover some predictions of the format. I do think sagas will slow down the format, as they're better on defense than offense, and can play defense for more turns. They also are better blocking than attacking, because when you block, you get to choose what you block, and keep the saga around for the next chapter that you probably want to get. I think the format will feel slower than Tarkir Dragonstorm, but faster than Aether Drift. Like Tarkir Dragonstorm and Aether Drift, there's not a ton of common good 1 and 2 drops. However, mid-range aggro feels more prevalent than it was in Aether Drift. My last prediction is on job select equipment because they're so prevalent in this format. I don't think you're going to re-equip job select equipment often. Maybe there's an exception for the 1 mana equip short sword type variants, but past that, most of the equipment is 3 to 6 mana to equip. That's quite a bit of mana just to equip. You usually want to spend that mana adding to the board or removing from your opponent's board. That said, I do think your most powerful equipments will be very important late game. So don't sleep on them, I think they'll be good. This is more some gameplay advice. Look to play cards before you go ahead re-equipping your equipment. That's all for today. I'm hoping that Matt gets better to bring his take on Final Fantasy soon, so stay tuned for that, and see you in the next one.